Wind Waker isn't known for its dungeons. In fact, it doesn't have as many as, say, Twilight Princess or Ocarina of Time, but there are some pretty good ones here. We recently finished up Wind Waker on stream, and today I want to look at each of the dungeons in this game and rank them from worst to best. Now this will be based purely off the dungeons itself and not the bosses. I plan on ranking them separately, so if you want to see that too, be sure to subscribe and let's go ahead and jump right into the ranking. In last place, we have the dreadful Forsaken Fortress. I'm gonna be honest, I don't like this place at all, really. Throughout this game, you visit Forsaken Fortress twice, the first time being the worst. The first time you come here is to save your sister who's been kidnapped by the giant bird, aka the Helmarok King, and we get shot out of a cannon and lose our sword. And without a weapon, we're defenseless, so the whole first time here is a stealth mission. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't like stealth missions, especially here. Plus, you get here so early in the game that I have trouble going back and replaying it just because I know I'm going to have to suffer through this part again. Not only that, this place is very confusing to navigate. At least it was for me. And the worst part is, if you get spotted by an enemy, you get sent to the jail cell all the way at the start, so you have to make your way through this place again. To be honest, I wouldn't even really consider this a dungeon, really, but it does have a boss and an item, so I guess it is a dungeon, just a really weak one. Now usually when dungeons are weaker than others, they have something to make up for it, like the music, but the theme playing here is very repetitive. It's not bad, it's just not anything special. I will say the second visit here isn't all that bad, because you can just speed your way to the boss and quickly get it over with, since you should have most of this area memorized from the last time here. Plus your new items you didn't have the first time can also make getting through this place a bit easier as well. But overall, a pretty weak dungeon and probably one of my least favorites in the entire series. Next up, we have Ganons Tower, the final dungeon in the game. Now this one is similar to Forsaken Fortress with how short it is, except this time it's not a pain to get through, nor is it a stealth mission. The first half of this dungeon is a boss rush, pretty much. You'll have 4 paths to go, each leading to a room themed after one of the previous dungeons, as well as that dungeon's boss. Now there is one thing I specifically really dislike about this part. It's the weird brownish gray filter over the screen. It's only in the first half. Once you get to the second half it turns back to normal, but I just hate the way it looks and I don't really know why they did this. Honestly, it just makes things kind of hard to see and kind of annoying. Other than that though, the rooms are neat little throwbacks with fun puzzles and the bosses are also fun to fight again. Now the second half of this dungeon has you fighting Phantom Ganon over and over while following the hilt of his blade to the next room. Eventually you'll get to the end and get the light arrows and finally be able to kill him. This part is fine and I don't really have any complaints, plus the light arrows are pretty cool. After this you pretty much just climb the staircase making your way to the final boss. The music here is also good. It's another recognizable Ganon's theme that is kind of a throwback from previous Ganon's castle themes, specifically Ocarina of Time. So this dungeon is fine, but there just isn't much going on for it or nothing that really stands out. In 5th place, we have the Wind Temple. This is the first temple on the list that actually feels like a temple. When you hear Wind Temple, you think it's going to be cool and have a lot of fun puzzles revolving around wind, but honestly, it's not great. My biggest complaint is a complaint I have with 2 other dungeons in this game, and that being that they are escort missions. To access this dungeon, you have to bring along Makar. You'll want to bring him with you so you can have him do useful things like plant trees? And that's actually about it. But don't get me wrong, that can actually be very useful later when you get this dungeon's item. What sucks about this though is the floor hands can grab Makar and take him away, which can be very annoying, causing you to backtrack a lot. Another major reason why I may not like this dungeon that much is because of how easily I get stuck here. I don't know if it's just the layout of the dungeon or what, but I always get stuck at some point, especially in the big middle room with all the floors. Honestly, I find this place way more tricky than even the water temple from Ocarina of Time. One of my favorite things about this dungeon, however, is the item you get here. That item being the hook shot, which is pretty cool. It makes getting to places a lot easier. And I like how if you use the iron boots and then hook shot the face statues, you can knock them down. It is weird though to get an item as good as the hook shot so late in the game. because this is the final dungeon you go to before you get to Ganons Tower. As for the aesthetics of this dungeon, it's kind of bland. Everything is brown and there isn't much color, which isn't too bad. I mean, it kind of makes sense for a temple like this, but it also reminds me of the first half of Ganon's Castle, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. Plus the music here isn't too bad either, and it actually fits this temple pretty well. At the end of the day, this isn't the worst dungeon, it's just held back by confusing layout and some annoying puzzles and enemies. In 4th place, we have the Tower of the Gods. This is another dungeon that is kind of an escort mission, but not nearly as bad as the previous one. But with that being said, it still has its slow parts. When you first enter this dungeon, you're on your boat and you can swim around, which is pretty cool. The water level will rise and lower, so you can access certain places depending on the level of the water. Now that sounds cool, but it requires waiting. A lot of waiting, which is a problem with most of this dungeon. Wait for the water levels to rise, wait for the floating platforms to move. It's very slow paced, which hurts this dungeon for me, because this dungeon definitely had potential. Now once you get to the second part of this dungeon, you'll have to bring the statues back to the middle room. This is where you first learn the command melody. With this you can control the statues. You'll be using this a bit throughout this dungeon, getting the statues back to the middle. Now this dungeon isn't all bad though. You do get the bow here, which is probably one of the best items in the game, especially considering all the arrow types you get later. Also, the music. This dungeon probably has my favorite theme out of all the dungeons in this game. Once you hear it for the first time, you know that the trial ahead of you isn't going to be easy. It's just so good. As for the way the dungeon looks, it's fine, but that's about all I can say for it. Overall, it's a pretty decent dungeon, only held back by the slow pacing. In 3rd place, earning the bronze medal, is the Earth Temple. This is the last dungeon on the list that is an escort mission, and the one I feel is the least annoying of the 3. In fact, I actually like this dungeon quite a bit. I remember playing this dungeon for the first time as a kid and not liking it at all really, but going back through recently to play it again, and I actually liked it way more than I remembered. But like I said, this temple has you escorting Medley. Similar to how Makar grew trees, Medley uses her harp as a mirror shield, which I think is a bit more fun to use. Honestly, my favorite thing about this temple is all the mirror shield puzzles, especially being able to reflect light from Medley's harp to your mirror shield. It makes for some pretty unique and interesting puzzles. Which brings us to my favorite thing about this temple. Well, at least one of my favorite things, which is the item, the mirror shield. I've always really liked using mirror shields in Zelda games. I just wish we would see it return in a newer one. One thing that stands out most in this dungeon is one of the later rooms where you have to bounce light off the mirrors and get it from one side of the room to the other. It's actually a pretty long puzzle, which is a bit tedious, but it was also kind of cool and it felt really good to finally complete it. This dungeon also has some unique enemies, like the Poes, which can only be heard if you shine them with light, and then the Redeads. Yep, they're still as creepy as ever. Another thing I like about this dungeon is the atmosphere. It kinda has a creepy vibe to it, and the music really complements it. It kinda reminds me of the Shadow Temple a bit from Ocarina of Time, which I really like. This dungeon is really good overall, with some fun puzzles and enemies to fight, but is only held back again because you have to bring Medley everywhere. But the fun mirror shield puzzles makes up for it. In 2nd place, earning the silver medal, is Dragon Roost Cavern, which is the first dungeon in this game. I feel like the developers always start off with a bang with these dungeons, because I feel like most first dungeons in Zelda games are always some of the best, and Dragon Roost Cavern is no exception. I will say though, it is weird to start the game with a fire temple, when it feels like most of the time we start with like some sort of forest temple, but I'm not complaining. This dungeon is a great start, and you also don't have to keep track of someone like Makar or Medley, and you can play it at your own pace. This dungeon not only focuses on its puzzles, but there's also a lot of combat here as well. Plus, my favorite part has to be the dungeon itself. It looks so good. You've got the indoor sections, some of which resemble cave areas while others are filled with lava. Then you've got the outdoor sections, which are a complete contrast with the bright blue sky. Some of the puzzles in the dungeon are actually pretty cool too, like using the water pots to harden the lava to get across platforms, and using this dungeon's item, that being the grapple hook, to swing across stuff. I believe this is the first time we've seen the grapple hook in a Zelda game up to this point, and it's really fun to use. Not only does it allow you to swing across lava and pits, but you can also steal items from enemies, so it's multi-use. This dungeon just feels like the most traditional dungeon in this game, from its puzzles to its layout, which makes it a top tier Zelda dungeon for me, but there's one I like a bit better. And in first place, and my number one favorite dungeon in Wind Waker is Forbidden Woods. This may be a hot take, I'm honestly not sure, but I never really hear people talk about this dungeon, which kind of surprises me because I feel like it's really good. First off, the dungeon itself just looks great. Now, I may be biased because I really love forest temples in Zelda, but this has the most color out of all of the Wind Waker dungeons, and it just stands out. You've got all the greenery, then you have the purple flowers that you can jump into. You've got a few rooms that you can see the sky in. You've got the big flower in the middle room that you can cut down to get to the bottom level. There's just so much color in this dungeon. Not only that, the music here fits so well too. It definitely feels like you step foot in a place you shouldn't be. Almost like it's forbidden. This dungeon also has some fun puzzles that involve using your leaf by flying across gaps or blowing platforms to the other side. Then you've got the Deku Seed things that you can use to destroy the door eyes. And lastly, this dungeon's item, the boomerang, which you can use to cut vines and destroy P-hats way easier. Which is another thing I like in this dungeon, that being the variety of enemies. You've got the Deku Babas, you got the P-hats, you got the Moblins, you got the cool moth enemies, which are probably my favorite enemies in this game. But you have those stupid sticker ball guys that stick to you. Yeah, I hate those guys. This dungeon is just so good, and it's the first dungeon I think of when I hear the Wind Waker. It has everything I want out of a dungeon, from the enemies to the atmosphere and even the layout. Overall, this dungeon is top tier for me, which is why I place it at number 1. And there you have my dungeon ranking for Wind Waker dungeons. Do you agree with this list? I would love to know what you would rank these dungeons down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video and want to see the boss rankings next, drop a like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 1,500 subs before May. But that will do it for me, and hopefully you all have a great day, and I will see you guys in the next video. So as always, thanks for watching.